Hello, my name is Alice Jacob. Today I will be presenting my paper, which is entitled An Initial Investigation into the Course of Creativity Within the Design Process. In this paper, I will be looking at the relationship between the designer's personality and the creative process. This project has been supervised by Richard Chips, who I thank him for his support. The proposed paper represents the culmination of my master's studies at the De Montfort University, Leicester, United Kingdom, where I recently graduated with an MA in Design Management. My dissertation explored the development of a creativity tool to assist designers and clients to more effectively engage in the design process. As an initial study, it challenged some preconceptions about the personality profile of the creative practitioner and consequently engaged in a debate about the nature of the creative process. This ultimately led to this paper. Due to the fact that this initial study started as a dissertation project, the first steps in developing a more accurate investigation consisted in contextualizing the topic and structure it in a precise manner. Initially, general factors about the UK's creative industries and the designer's place on the employability scene will be discussed. Consequently, the presentation will progress towards discussing the importance of understanding the designer's personality and linking it to the creative design process. Lastly, the findings of this initial study will be presented. Initially, we had to understand the role of the designers in the creative economy. In value-added terms, in the United Kingdom, the sector shows consistent above-average growth for more than a decade and contributes over £10 billion to the balance of trade. As a consequence, the perception of creativity is changing. It is now becoming a tool to enhance this shifting economy. While conducting this research, it became apparent that designers are becoming the leaders of the creative industries. We discovered that these changes are reflected on the employability scene. Design-oriented business organizations are now expanding the list of job specifications, demanding much more than individual skill and talent. The typical designer is now expected to have excellent creative instinct, mastering software intuitively, and communicate effectively in all media. Additionally to all this, the personality factor is increasingly gaining attention. Employers are expecting designers to have a certain personality which would fit the organization's cultural system. We also discovered that the long-term success of the UK's creative industries will be depending on a steady supply of creative designers. As such, the underlying principle of this investigation was initiated from the question: would a better understanding of the designer's individuality help to support and improve creative performance? The challenge was to explore whether designers could perform more creatively if they and the industry would understand more effectively the psychological dimensions of the design process. The limited number of present research studies show that the designer's personality is multidimensional and intricate. Researchers argue that the designer's complex personality places them in a distinctive category of people who understand each other's thinking but struggle to communicate with individuals with opposite personalities. Fallstein, one of the researchers, also believed that designers as a group have a common way of looking at the world. Therefore, this initial study has been developed because there appears to be little research evidence that clearly discusses the link between this distinctive personality and the designer's creativity. Due to the fact that one of the key commonly understood personality traits are introversion and extroversion, this initial investigation started with the idea of exploring the relationship between creativity, extroversion and introversion. According to previous research, introverts tend to like quiet activities, while extroverts tend to like stimulating activities. In order to try and identify a clear link, this step-by-step study used the already proven links between psychoticism and creativity. Past studies showed that psychotic individuals tend to disregard common sense and behave impulsively, while neurotic individuals are emotionally unstable. Thus, this initial study attempts to close the loop between the personality dimensions mentioned above and creativity. The first step in our research was the initial pilot study, which took shape while conducting the primary research for the MA dissertation, when during the discussions with postgraduate students and design practitioners, distinct attitudes towards introversion and extroversion were observed. The pilot study explored a number of issues related to the working processes of designers and included a number of specific questions that began to identify some of the psychological traits evident in their working patterns. As part of this, 57 2D designers were asked to self-evaluate their personality based on two questions. Do you consider yourself introverted or extroverted? And when designing, do you work better alone or part of a team? These two questions started to explore the psychological dimensions of the interviewees. The findings were unexpected and conflicted anecdotal evidence from practicing designers whose expectations were that designers are extroverted. The outcome of this step of the research suggested that designers consider themselves introverted, and this has been supported by the second question, where they expressed a preference towards working alone. This common way of thinking was succinctly expressed in the paradoxical statement, I am introverted. I like to work alone in a great team of work-aloners. This statement shows the complexity of the designer's personality. These initial findings suggested and stimulated additional debate and dialogue. Further investigation was needed in order to prove the findings and to eliminate some of the weaknesses in the research methodology, such as the unstructured discussions. This, therefore, led to a follow-on study. For measuring introversion and extroversion, a shorter and revised adaptation of Eysenck's personality questionnaire was used, and it was given to the same designers. The results of this study suggested again contradictory outcomes. The same designers who through self-evaluation perceived themselves as introverted in the subsequent structured assessment were identified as having a tendency towards extroversion. This contradiction between the designer's self-perception and the results of the formalized test was a surprise, and it was felt that additional respondents were required in order to draw any meaningful conclusions. In the next phase, the number of the initial subject sample was tripled. In total, 95 designers participated. This time, the methodology was further developed. Two psychometric tests were used, Gogh's Creative Personality Scale and Eysenck's Personality Questionnaire. Ultimately, they were correlated. The diagram shows the results of the study. To understand better the diagram, I will explain. The vertical scale measures creativity using Gogh's Creative Personality Test. Warmer shades mean higher creativity, while cooler shades lower creativity. The horizontal axis measures the level of introversion-extroversion. Further along the y-axis, a greater degree of extroversion can be noticed, while closer to the origin, a greater degree of introversion. As the diagram suggests, there is a potential link between the introverted-extroverted personality trait and creativity. It does not suggest, however, that these individuals exhibit creative practice inherently. It only suggests that the ability exists, perhaps due to the nature of their jobs, which allows them to manifest their creativity. Therefore, because the investigation is still in the early stages, it is acknowledged that general assumptions cannot be formulated other than in a hypothetical manner. The findings suggest that in the case of 2D designers, it does appear to be a positive link between introversion and creativity, while we noticed a negative link between extroversion and creativity. One of the major findings of our study at this point was that the majority of individuals who are neither strongly extroverted or introverted are highly creative. These findings were further discussed with design practitioners who, based on their own experience, suggested that these results are not surprising. In their opinion, the majority of designers are not highly creative. They are stylists, and there is a limited number of highly creative individuals turned innovators. This appears to map against our findings. Therefore, the final study was further developed. The psychoticism and neuroticism dimensions were investigated. The links suggested by the previous results were debated between a number of practitioners to gauge their opinion. They suggested that based on their experience in the creative industries, there appears to be more than one sort of design creativity. It became apparent that this group of experienced practitioners perceived the issues differently. Interestingly enough, the results showed that even in the case of the designers, the already proven link between psychoticism and creativity might possibly exist. The diagram displays a predisposition towards higher levels of creativity in the case of the designers who had an inclination towards psychoticism. The results led once again to formulating a new set of hypothetical assumptions. Therefore, it does appear to be a positive link between psychoticism and creativity, while once again we noticed a negative link between neuroticism and creativity. Another major discovery of our investigation consisted in the fact that the majority of individuals who are neither strongly psychotic or neurotic are highly creative. This was once again supported by the design industry practitioners who suggested that these designers might be in fact the stylists and not the innovators. Nonetheless, based on the preliminary findings, two separate initial profiles were possible to build. For the purpose of this study, designers who scored high in the creative personality test were considered highly creative, while the ones who scored low on the personality test were considered less creative. These initial results suggest that a creative business might achieve more creative results from an introverted designer. By using these findings, the employer would be much more aware of how the designer fits the company's culture while being aware of the risk. These findings, the findings of our research, are summarized on the following slide. The results show that the more psychotic a designer is, the more creative therefore it could be more productive. If our results would prove to be accurate, then the employer would have to mediate. If an impulsive designer is more creative, he or she might become an asset in the company. Perhaps adjusting the psychometric tests and use them in a similar correlative manner could possibly help the creative business environment in identifying the optimum candidate for the specific job. At this point, I would like to form our conclusions. Firstly, a further study with a greater selection of individuals is recommended. The methodology should be changed, a different approach that allows the use of the SPSS And I would like the opportunity to have a greater exploration in the form of a PhD with the aim of developing a virtual visual assessment tool. Thank you. At the end, I didn't have a...
That's absolutely fine.